Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Dyer and welcome to Colorado Inside Out as we kick off Labor Day weekend on this Friday, August the 30th. Let me get right to introducing you to this week's Insider panel. We have Krista Kafer, a columnist with the Denver Post, along with Ean Thomas Tafoya, community leader and former Denver mayoral candidate, Luige del Puerto, editor with Colorado Politics and the Denver Gazette, and then also Carly West, VP Government Affairs with the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to you, Carly, this week. So this week, I came back to work from summer vacation, as did Colorado lawmakers, who spent 4 days at the state capitol in a special session called by our governor. There were a lot of back and forth, right? And talking about our property tax compromise plans that would eliminate 2 property tax initiatives from the ballot this coming November. Krista, I will start off with you.
Well, we're not surprised it did pass. They were under a lot of pressure. Nobody, well, I say nobody, a lot of people were a little bit concerned about those 2 initiatives. I will say this, I think Michael Fields is a genius. Vance, Colorado, very, very shrewd in using the tools available to get the kind of property tax relief that we needed. That said, I don't know this is the best way to do law. I just, call me a skeptic, where we have initiatives, we basically have a parallel sort of lawmaking system alongside our representative government. And the problem with that, and I can name all kinds of initiatives, you get a lot of bad ideas that people respond to emotionally, and there is no way to vet those ideas in the same way that you get through the legislature. I mean, the fact is that legislators and ordinary non-legislative people we're the same thing, but at least with the legislature, there is a process for vetting these ideas. When it comes to initiatives, any idea can be thrown out there, and as long as it can be marketed, it can pass. Whether it's wolf reintroduction or conflicting financial things in our Constitution, these are not necessarily good ideas. A lot of times they're really bad ideas. I think this situation should make us even more skeptical to our initiative system. I don't think it works.
Okay, Ean.
Well, I'm a supporter of initiatives, just generally speaking, having run several, both at the state and local level, to create the change I think our communities are demanding most, especially when legislators seem gridlocked. I think in this instance, though, I would have rather a special session not been drawn, and instead everyone came together to focus on a no campaign. Can you imagine Colorado Springs Mayor, Aurora Mayor, and Denver Mayor together in TV commercials saying how devastating this would be to our communities? I think the local districts in particular, and listening in on what people were talking about what this means for, say, Elizabeth, and not being able to have a paramedic team on 1/3 of the time. Like, that is a dangerous game to be playing. And though I respect Michael Fields and have even been on a show where we monitored a debate together, I think that this is dangerous and reckless to austerity in our country and certainly in our state of Colorado. And I want to shout out the 22 legislators who I think held their ground and tried to find a more equitable deal through this, trying to find more relief for people of lower incomes. And I certainly don't think this is going to come down to the renters by any means. And when there was a study that came out that literally said that in the short term, this would expand disparities racially, ethnicity, along disability lines, how can we say that this is a win?
I mean, this is the give and take of our grand experiment in democracy, American-style democracy, if you will. The risks for both sides are incredible. On the one hand, if these ballot measures stay on the ballot and they pass, you're looking at, $3 billion potentially in revenue losses for local governments. That's the risk for not going to a special session. For the proponents, of course, there's always the risk that, the mayors of Aurora and Colorado Springs and Denver and everybody else will say, hey, we're going to have a very vigorous no campaign, and they'll win, meaning these 2 ballot measures lose, and then what do you have? You'll try it again next election cycle. And so now you're forced with the situation that you're in. I think that the governor is compelled to do something about it. There's tremendous pressure from lots of places, and now we have this solution, for now at least.
For now. Carly.
So we actually think that this is a great result because coming out of session, we felt back in May that we didn't see enough relief, and there were a couple of outstanding issues that while 233 was absolutely a step in the right direction, we felt strongly that more relief was needed and there needed to be some additional assurances in what we knew that residents and property owners needed. So for the Chamber, 85% of our members are small businesses, and many of those members, the value of their home is the financial backing to their enterprise. So this matters both on the residential side as well as the commercial side for businesses. But then on top of that, we've seen commercial rates in Colorado that are just an outlier and have really set us up to be at an economic disadvantage for businesses here in the state. So finding additional protections to ensure that if we see a spike like this, 30 to 60% across the state in property tax values, if we see a spike like that again, we needed assurances that there would be a real cap that would keep people from feeling that pain in the future and make sure that we are competing economically.
Advance Colorado, the organization backing the property tax initiatives, that 108 and 50 that started all the discussion at the state capitol. This organization is also behind a statewide measure regarding school choice. Each week leading up to Election Day, Colorado Inside Out will discuss one of the many measures facing voters in November. Initiative 138 calls for a provision to be added to the state's education statute that would say each K through 12 child has the right to school choice. And Ean, school choice means your neighborhood school, a private school, homeschool. It could be many different things.
Yeah, and I'm not sure really why we need this, given that school choice has been around since I think the early 90s. I personally choiced in to a school that wasn't in my district for high school because it was closer for the type of program that I wanted to have. At that time, and I think this is where we're failing with some school choices, transportation options don't really exist. And so without buses and things like that, how can communities truly access the kind of program they think is the best need for their kid is a challenging one. When I looked into this a little bit further, I can see how the Colorado Education Association is saying that perhaps this is a leap towards allowing a voucher program. In particular, when you're talking about private school, you've always had, right, I think, to take your kid to private school. You know, my relatives went to Catholic school, and so I'm hearing them out on that. Does this need to be in the Constitution? Not so sure. It's kind of interesting that the word choice is kind of on the ballot in two different ways.
Yeah, well, it really is not a radical idea, this idea of school choice. I mean, if you think about it, how many students do we have that are in the sort of school choice setting? What, 15% of our kids? At the end of the day, it's really a battle over resources. About half or nearly half of the state's revenue goes to schools, K-12 schools in particular. And so on the one hand, you have teachers union and the school districts that want to keep that money within the quote-unquote traditional schools. They certainly believe that the schools are perpetually starved, chronically underfunded, and if you siphon off the money and put it into a school choice setting, then that takes away from what they're doing. Now, of course, for the quote-unquote reformers, school choice advocates, the parents do need to bring their kids to somewhere else, and they should have the option if their own district school is not performing.
Carly.
You know, we love to see innovation in everything, and education is no exception. So we know from our Colorado employers that they need students who are ready to work, that come to those jobs prepared with the education they need to deliver. And at the same time, we know that there are a lot of options out there that students can explore. It's an area where we want to see success for every Colorado student, and we want to make sure that they are ready to enter our workforce. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to succeed in Colorado. We're hearing from companies that students are not necessarily prepared for the workforce, or that at the end of the day, we're bringing a lot of talent from outside of Colorado in because we're not educating a sufficient number of students in our state. So we've got a lot of trends that I think we want to address on the education front. I agree with Ean. School choice is already something that we have, that we support, that we think is great out there. So our focus as the chamber is really on the things that we think need a solution.
Of course, I rail against the referendum and initiative process. I would ditch the whole thing. But if I'm going to have ideas put before me as a voter, of course, I want them to be good ideas. And so, supporting school choice, it just seems like a no-brainer. As Ean said, we've had inter-district and intra-district school choice since the early 90s. Got charter schools in the early 90s. We have a lot of homeschooling. We also have a lot of parents that choose private schools, and being able to affirm that right, I think, is important. We've got about half of the states of the union now have a voucher program or a tax credit program for parents to be able to choose private schools. And I think of a lot of folks that come from middle class or lower income families that could really use that bit of support to be able to send a child to a private school. And I just think we need to equalize our system. Let's send the money where the kid goes, whether it's a public traditional school, a public charter school, homeschooling expenses, private schooling, wherever that child is going to do best. Let's support it. Let's let the money go with the child. And I'd like to think this is a good first step.
Okay. The Colorado GOP has a new leader, or does it? Following a vote by party members last weekend to oust Dave Williams as the head of the Colorado GOP, Eli Bremer of El Paso County was named the chairman. But Williams is not accepting those results. And both men have filed court documents this week asking that the other person be seen as illegitimate as a possible leader. So here we go again. Luigi.
You don't like two Republican state chairmen claiming to be both legitimate? Don't like that situation some 45 days, 40 days before the election? Mm-hmm. This is is incredibly important election that we have this year. And quite frankly, the party is in disarray. As you noted, we have two people. One just got elected by critics of Dave Williams last Saturday, Mr. Bremer, and he's saying he's the legitimate chairman of the party, and Dave Williams saying, no, that's not true. Mr. Bremer said he's going to open an interim headquarters. What are you going to do with the resources of the party? What happens? All kinds of questions that, again, point to just this, the state of affairs for the Republican Party, which, quite frankly, is not good. Just really quickly, I think the National Republican Party is going to have to step in and decide who exactly is the chairman here. Mm-hmm. The courts have already signaled that they're not going to weigh in on a political question like this.
Okay, all right.
So we know that the states that are most competitive economically are states where there is balance in the government. And in order to have that kind of balance, you need strong, thoughtful leaders for both parties. And what we need are leaders who are looking to foster good candidates and good discussion, who don't see somebody with a different point of view as just naturally the enemy. There's room to disagree and still see value in others' perspectives. At the Chamber, we run a couple of leadership programs where we take future leaders and business folks in Colorado, and we teach them the skills it takes to have a hard negotiation, how to work with people who have very different positions than you do, and how to dig into really complicated issues and come out of that with a good relationship and a good outcome for the state. So we think that's a priority for what we want to see in terms of leadership from both of our parties. And I think it probably goes without saying that Mr. Williams has never participated in one of our leadership programs.
Okay, all right. And Eli Bremer one of the first things he did was reach out to all the Republican candidates who are running and say, we support you.
Mm-hmm. Well, hear me out, because I think this could happen, right? So Bremer's taken over. He won the vote. He's the rightful leader. Now, Williams could continue to contest that vote. I don't know if this sounds a little familiar. He could contest it, and then he could foment violence, and people could attack the office. It sounds a little familiar. I don't know, but it could happen, right? It could happen. In all seriousness, Williams is, thank goodness, he's out of a job. He's a terrible leader. He's a very unethical person. I think he's going to have a hard time finding work, and I'm not exactly empathetic, but what kinds of jobs are available to someone who is always unethical? Who uses his party's funds or his business's funds to fund himself, who breaks laws, breaks rules. I'm thinking even like Amazon delivery driver might be a stretch. So I made a list of some good jobs. He could go to work for the mob. I understand there's some cash there. There's a living there. He could start an international crime syndicate or a crime cartel. He's got the beard. But he could look the part. I'm not saying he's got options. For the sake of the party, I would like for him to take one of these options, be it Amazon delivery driver or international crime boss of a syndicate, and let the party be able to do what it needs to do to get people elected.
So just really quickly, I think the vote was 88% to oust him, and that's probably as close to a unanimous vote you can have in the Republican Party. I'm not Republican, but Krista, you were once, right?
I am, and I think, 88, that sounds like something that could have been completely fabricated and stolen. I think it's time to take a stand, stop the steal, and keep Williams in power. Of course, I'm
She's
kidding.
being sarcastic.
And yes, I am a Republican.
Okay. Ian, your thoughts?
I think this is also funny. I never laughed this hard, I think, here on Colorado Inside Out. I got to shout out, I think, Kyle Clark and the way they're talking about as the GOP turns
Yes,
is this
good.
telenovela that everyone wants to tune into. I mean, is it much different than having a surprise event under a bridge or at a Four Seasons landscaping? I mean, it feels like that party is totally in shambles. Luigi, to answer your question, where would you put your resources? Into yourself and into the people you support, which is exactly what we saw Dave Williams do. I think that this isn't over, and partly why I think we're seeing the conservative interest put so much resources into the initiative process, because they are so close to losing a complete supermajority at the legislature. This is not going to help them. Their national leadership is in so many ways attacking people for who they are and who they love and the power of your own body. I don't think that flies in Colorado. So I think that you should expect a more conservative interest to continue being out there, paying for firms to collect while we all tune into the telenovelas.
Yeah, well, like you were saying, I heard somebody say this week that Michael Fields is probably the most powerful Republican in Colorado.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to disagree with that? I mean, they brokered a giant deal. They got ballot issues that are right there out in front of you. And I don't see Dave Williams or any of these individuals negotiating directly with the governor. So,
And Michael Fields is nice.
Okay.
I would also say, when you look at Colorado, how we vote on ballot initiatives looks a little bit different than it does in terms of our candidates. You do see almost a supermajority in the legislature of Democrats, but you see a lot more moderate positions at the ballot. So I think that's very much a reflection of the candidates that are coming forth and how Coloradans feel about them.
Yeah. Okay. So Colorado's job picture appears weaker than we previously thought. New data that came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that previously released employment figures overcounted some 72,000 jobs through the end of March. Now, Carly, I know you're with the local Denver Metro Chamber, but I would imagine all chambers throughout Colorado are looking at these numbers. And here in Colorado, here in Denver, we've also seen some numbers kind of go down too.
So we could talk about probably employment numbers all day, but I'll dig in specifically to the construction numbers. And we've seen this problem coming for a while, the decline in construction jobs. And a lot of what we're seeing, we're in a real chicken and the egg situation here, because our high cost of living has contributed to a lot of folks with those skilled positions, building our homes and our buildings and our roads. We've seen a lot of those folks go to places that are also having a big construction boom but are much more affordable. We've also seen a concentration of the lack of jobs be really on the residential side as opposed to commercial. So single family and multifamily housing, which we know we desperately need as a state in order to make this an affordable state for people to live in. We've got some national policies and national factors like inflation and cost of materials that are influencing that. But there are a lot of policies and decisions being made at the state level that could help us address those challenges and make it a lot easier and faster to bring the housing that people want, specifically for purchase entry-level housing, onto the market.
When you hear those construction, like 4,700 construction jobs lost last year, but you see all the cranes in Denver, it's kind of hard. Thank you for breaking it down, explaining what's behind those numbers, because you don't realize, construction's slowing here? Doesn't feel like it.
A part of the issue isn't just the high cost of living, it's also some of the regulatory environment. So think about our we've got a very high minimum wage here in Denver. If you've got a small business, a small restaurant, that's going to be a deterrent to being able to hire people. You've also got the family leave program and other things that if I'm a business and I want to look into moving into a city and I look at Denver, maybe Dallas looks more competitive, maybe Salt Lake City looks more competitive, or other areas around the West where you also have an educated and anxious to work population, great infrastructure and other things, but don't have these regulatory problems that make it more difficult to have a thriving business. So when the legislature reconvenes this spring, I hope they take a second look at some of these things, and certainly City Council, when they're asking themselves, should we raise taxes, should we add more to the regulatory burden, they need to look at these numbers and think, maybe we ought to go the other direction.
Okay.
Well, jobs in the construction industry, grew up doing it. I think those are really transferable skills, so I think I at least have hope for their families. There's a difference, I think, when your job gets automated or AI can take over and changes what your skill set is. And so at least I feel hopeful in that sense that with some of the new legislation that's been passed at the State House, that there's going to be more investment in housing in particular, which I agree with you is a huge crisis, and I heard so much about when I was running for mayor, of course. We brought this up before too, like unions and the power of people and organizing in their jobs and wanting to demand more benefits, which also limits how many people you can employ because of what your overhead is. I do want to point out though that economic development, just chasing it for jobs, doesn't always get the outcomes that we always want to get. So on Monday, City Council, for example, the Denver Economic Development is trying to attract with tax credits a data center to District 9, Globeville, using diesel generators. Right? Is that the area where we know has so much air pollution that we want to put diesel engines? Or how about the fact that the governor in Adams County greenlighted a nicotine factory in Adams County at the same time that we're taxing it to fund our health equity programs? It's just like we're going to create more jobs to create more nicotine, but at the same time we're going to tax our people to get off of nicotine, but then use it for health equity. There's issues around economic development and international trade on social and equity issues. I've had conversations with the governor about that. We really need to continue having that conversation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're very aggressively competing with Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, all of these states. And it goes without saying, Cardigan probably talked about this some more, but you have to have certainty for businesses. You have to have a taxing environment that can accommodate the kind of growth and attract the kind of growth that you want. If you don't have these fundamentals, businesses are not going to stay here. And those businesses from California, the great Republic of California, all those great people over there that we want to attract, they're going to fly over us and head over to Texas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, that's been heavy conversations this week. Let's talk about some of our highs and lows. I know you like to say disgrace, Krista. We'll start on the negative, so we end on a high note. I will let you start.
Why don't I just keep pounding this nail of Dave Williams? He lost. He needs to leave. Shame on him. It is a disgrace of the week, a disgrace of, I almost said lifetime. Didn't say it. But he needs to leave and let the real leadership take that seat.
Okay. Ian, what disappointed you this week?
Seeing the new surfacing of audio from the vice presidential candidate from the Republican side who says that if you don't have children, you can't be a teacher. I mean, I started my career as an educator. People spend years learning to craft their pedagogy, and I just thought, how many more weird things can these people say?
Okay. Luigi?
It's kind of both good and bad. I look forward to sessions and I'm a political geek, but at the same time, we're in the middle of summer, and or having to do this, just the thought of, and it would. Here's the thing: they were supposed to take 3 days, okay, 3 days, but 3 days, guys.
Okay, all right, Carly.
So Denver Rustlers was this week, and this is a great organization, bipartisan leaders from across the state that joined together to support agriculture and 4-H and kids in the state. And on Tuesday, they had their event down at the state fair at the livestock auction, and unfortunately we weren't able to have any of our legislators join us because of the session. So it is a great event. It's a real show of bipartisanship, and look forward to next year when we can have our legislature with us as well.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about something good.
So I was going to give it to Barbara Kirkmeyer, Senator, for just being her dignified, smart, effective self and a model as a legislator. But I got to give it to Patty Calhoun, who's not here, whose seat I'm in, and I miss her, and I just think she's fabulous, the founder and editor of Westward magazine.
She's with her mom. Yep. Ian.
I want to shout out a partnership that we've just developed with my day job with Green Latinos, with Grow Local and other partners. You can sign up on September 28th to go out and glean fruit trees to try to rescue fruit from all across Colorado. We're looking for teams right now. I was able to support it with an equity fund that my organization has, and it's an issue that I wrote a memo for when I worked in the mayor's office in 2012, and so I'm so excited that it's happening.
Okay, so where do we go to find out more?
You can go to Grow Local, and you can sign up online, and we'll have it on our Green Latinos website soon too.
All right, cool. All right.
Well, school started. I don't know if you noticed,
Yes,
and I do have a 13-year-old kid now, and he's I saw a picture of him on the first day of school, and he didn't look happy at all. He didn't look excited, none of that. But, I'm very happy that he's actually back to school. I always kind of remind myself that he was born here, he's growing up here, and he has the opportunity to actually go to a good school. And if he were born at another time or in another place even now, then it would be a completely different scenario. So I'm grateful for that.
Okay, good. Carly.
I know it's been a frustrating week, but at the same time, we think the special session was a great note to end on. We saw real bipartisanship, the governor calling together a lot of folks with very different views and finding a solution for Colorado. So as hot as it is in the Capitol right now and as frustrating as this week has been for many, I still think that this is a great conclusion to the property tax story.
Okay. All right. My high is the return of international sports with the Paralympics now underway in Paris, France. And Colorado has 8 athletes to root for in para-swimming, para-triathlon, parachuting, as well as wheelchair rugby and para-fencing. So let's keep the momentum going. Go Team USA. Thanks to this team as well, each of you for coming this week. Carly, first timer, you did a fabulous job. And thanks to you all for watching or listening to our podcast. We appreciate it. And one more little programming note. Make sure to catch our latest special edition of Colorado Inside Out, where we are focusing on Social Security, solvency, and the cost of aging. Now, the show premiered last night, but it is streaming on pbs12.org/CIO. Or just keep the TV on in your house, because in a couple hours at 10 o'clock, it's going to be rebroadcast, so you'll catch it then. All right? I'm Kyle Dyer. Have a great Labor Day weekend. I will see you next week here on PBS 12.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.